I mean, the overarching question of the series too for me was like, is this going to be smutty? After that first 100 pages, I was like, oh my gosh, we're hitting Smutsville. It is so good to be back recording a video in front of you guys. I know I was gone for a week. This is my first real video recording after everything that happened, and I just want to say thank you so much for all those who reached out. If you didn't hear the news, my brother-in-law passed away, and you know, it's been really cool to see all the love and support from you guys and the kind words as well. There's no community like the BookTube community, and all of you just, you know, made life a little bit better as that happened. And also, the channel kept growing. I mean, I was stoked to be able to come back and see that we're over 200 subscribers now, so awesome. Thank you so much for all of that. It means the world, and I'm just happy that you're happy watching me talk about books. So with that being said, my name is Graham. Welcome to the channel, and today we have a book review of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, the third book in A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm very excited to jump in here. If you did not watch my last review that happened a couple weeks ago, which is Crying in H Mart, we have a new review system here. It is called the SHIT system, and what that stands for is Submersion, Heart, Interest, and Takeaway. I'm going to go through all four of those categories and give a percentage, and we'll have an overall rating at the end, so we can kind of put some stars there. Did you see what I did there? Submersion is overarching story of the series, and if you haven't read the other ones, what are you doing here? There's going to be a little bit of spoilers for that. I'm sorry. But so far we've been following Feyre, right? She, of course, came into the Feywilds because she killed a Fey. Tamlin captured her. She kind of fell in love with them, and then we have Riesland who swooped in, and last book we found out that they were mates and happily in love forever, and they're gonna do great things. And then something crazy happened, right? We finished the last book with someone busting open a cauldron that is the magic system of the world, and her sisters get dropped in there, and they turn all magical and stuff, and turn into Fey made as well from the cauldron. And so we start off with Feyre being taken by Tamlin back to the Spring Court, and she is not happy about it, and she's being separated from her mate, who is Riesland. That's a lot to unpack there, right? That's two books in like a small setting. And so I have to say the story in those first 100 pages was awesome. I was so excited to be able to read them because we were doing espionage. Feyre felt like she could be captured at any time and caught. You couldn't tell if Tamlin noticed that she was mated or not, because apparently it's like this scent thing that could be going on. And you also had Lucian there, who is by far my favorite character of the series. And you know, Lucian stands rise up because he deserves a lot better, especially after this book. She goes through, she tricks the people of the Spring Court, or kind of destroys them from the inside, showing them how mean Tamlin was in the beginning, and then escapes. And I have to admit that after those first 100 pages, I was in it. And then after that, it just fell flat. The rest of the story fell flat quite a bit, and it did not submerge me as much as I wanted to. I was super hooked, and then all of a sudden I was pulled out because it grew very boring and dense. There's a lot of setup and a lot of things to be paid off over time, and it just didn't land. Even the payoffs didn't hit very well in this story, and it really bummed me out. I had high hopes, and I had a lot of things of what I wanted to have accomplished in this story, and none of those really hit. And there were directions I thought that Sarah J. Maas would go, and they were kind of avoided. I mean, the overarching question of the series too for me was like, is this going to be smutty? And I thought after that first 100 pages, I was like, oh my gosh, we're hitting Smutsville. I was so excited because they showed up, saw each other for the first time after a while, Riesland and Feyre, and they had their moment. And I was like, this book's gonna just have nonsense smut for the rest of it, because that was the first time one of the sex scenes or adult scenes felt like it wasn't really necessary and a little uncalled for. But then the rest of the book had zero scenes, and I was like, oh man, there was like a couple side off ones that didn't really have too much meaning, but they were just kind of hidden in longer chapters of detail. And you go, wow, Sarah J. Maas, I don't understand why your series is known as being any sort of, it's romantic, sure, there's romance in it, but I don't understand why there is a lot of talk of this being like a risque series. This is just a high fantasy series yet again. So Submersion, I don't know why I wasn't as submersed in this one. There were really cool story beats in here too. Like, there were some things that she did that were really cool and I enjoyed, but I found myself being like, what was the whole point of this chapter? Because this chapter contradicts it, and what is the whole point of that? And I just, yeah, the story didn't really drive forward as much as I wanted to, and it took a path that I felt you could have went really cool and didn't. And so for me, for Submersion, I give this a 48%. Heart is the next category, and what that is how did I feel when reading this book emotionally? There was a few scenes that tugged at my heartstrings quite a bit. Not to go too into detail, but there's a part where you have a reunion of Feyre and the sisters and also their father, and that brought me to have some emotions there. But I think what just kind of I was mentioning with the Submersion and the story is it kind of got roller coastered really, really fast. You have this scene where you're like, wow, that was a really nice payoff. And it just kind of went, all right, now we're on to this next part. And there's another part too involving Riesland and the sacrifices that he makes with his army. And you go, oh man, this is going to be an emotional ride. And in like one page, you're like, never mind, I'm not going to be emotional about this whatsoever. It felt very roller coastered over these things that were supposed to be huge payoffs. There were some epic parts where you're like, oh my gosh, you actually did the thing that you were going to do, and that's really cool. And then it just wasn't great either. There was just not a lot of feelings that made you could feel them and you're like, oh my gosh, and then it was just killed instantly by the writing or the progression forward to try to feel like it was tying loose ends or ending the series. This feels like an ending to the series, even though I know there's 2 more books and I know the next one is still in Feyre's perspective. As usual in this series, it gives you the feeling of adventure and intrigue, and there is huge love for all of these characters. Those are great heart emotions that I enjoy and feel in this story. Those are actually there, but at the same time, it's just kind of, yeah, it pushed over a lot of it. It's not as low as Submersion. I don't feel the story is as bad. The heart was definitely there for some instances. You could feel the love and the interest in family and things of that nature. And so I'm going to give this a solid like 65% in the heart category. That's where it's at. When it comes to cry levels, because that's kind of in the heart area, like did I cry at all? That one scene with the dad, I didn't shed a tear. A tear was just in there, you know, it was just kind of in your eyeball, ready to fall. And then as soon as the roller coaster over, it went away. So I give this a rating of half a tear. Only 1 tear. There was no April showers in this book. I don't know why my wife cried in this book. It's because she was thinking of me in a certain scene. And, you know, I'm sorry I didn't think about you. No, I understand why. So yeah. Next up we have the I category, and that is interest. How interested I am in the story. And to be honest, I am super interested in this world that Sarah J. Maas has built. I love Feyre, I love Riesland, I love the cast and crew, Cassian, I love Lucian, as I've mentioned, more, all of them. Everyone I'm introduced to, I really, really like. I think the characters are really well done, and I care about this little unit that's there. And there was something that just kept me reading through it. Like, I didn't stop at any point, even though every time I finished a chapter, I was like, what was the point? There was a lot of times I was like, what was the point of reading this chapter? And I know it sounds super critical of this book, but maybe my imagination just wanted me to see something else. I feel like the story could have gone a different way, but the knots were tied. Like, things got done. Some parts of it felt like that Sarah J. Maas knew where the ending was, and so she just had to be like, I made this too broad and have to narrow it down to get to this point. And so it led these things that almost felt like not worth my time or things of that nature. And yeah, it was kind of interesting. Coming from A Court of Mist and Fury, which I thought was really, really good, this fell flat compared to that. Except for those first 100 pages. First 100 pages, I was in 100%. Maybe I just had something else in mind. I don't know. But I'm interested. I was interested in it and to see where it went. And I honestly feel like that this is a good ending of the series right here. And so I don't really know what is left in the story. I know there is another book that's in Feyre's perspective, but then I know the 4th book is going to be in Nesta's perspective. And so I'm like, okay, I'm interested in hearing what Nesta has to do. Maybe it's a different story, or maybe it's a retelling of these stories. I'm not too sure what A Court of Silver and Flame will have in store for me. And so yeah, I'll keep reading to see what the hype is and what those books are. And so interest for me on this series is a good 85%. In this book, it helped me go through all the way. The interest was the strongest point. Last but not least, we have takeaway. This is like a lesson that I learned through the book, the last category of this rating system I have. So what's the takeaway from this? Well, there's an important message in A Court of Thorns and Roses, this entire series. It's family. You know, we have a whole family storyline going on. And family not only is the blood family that you have, but it's also the friends that you make. And so Feyre, she ends up being married into this like new family of friends that are really close, and they'll die for her and she'll die for them, and they will be one with each other. And it's awesome. It's really, really cool. But in this book too, I felt like it was really well done to also show the strength of your actual family, right? They go through a lot together, Feyre and the sisters, Nesta and Elaine, and they see something tragic happen to all of them at the same time, and there was just a strong feeling of, man, there's nothing, no matter how many fights you have, no matter how much stuff can get between you as family members, because you don't really get to pick who's in your family, you're just born into whatever situation you are and the people you're around. No matter what, you will stick together and by each other's side, and there'll be something that will bring you together where you can trust one another. And that was portrayed very, very well in A Court of Wings and Ruin. And so it really shows the importance of family. And that was a huge takeaway from this book. I feel like this story was all about that. And the story is also about being comfortable with yourself, figuring out who you are as a person. Feyre is going through changes in her life and doing good things and doing bad things. And she has to face herself face to face of, does she accept all the things that she has done in her life? And the answer was yes, I accept, no regrets of what I am. I know what I am, and I can live forward through it, the good and the bad. And it's just taking ownership of who you are. And so the messaging in it was really, really good, and I saw it. There wasn't parts of it that made me be like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. It's kind of basic messaging, the way it's presented, but you see it in there, and I think that's a really good takeaway in it. I think it's a pretty strong point. I don't think it's as strong as interest. I think interest is the strongest point of this whole series. And so with that, takeaway is going to have 80% for all of it. So let's go ahead and tally up those percentages real fast, and we'll see what the total is. So the average of all of that put together gives this a rating of 69.5%. 69.5%. Not the highest in the world, not the worst either. You're looking at something that's probably around 3.5 stars, I would say. That's a 3.5 star rating. So we have a 69.5% of this book, of The Court of Wings and Ruin. And I would say this is probably the weakest of all three of the books I have read so far of the series. And yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it. I'm not as passionate about my guesses for the rest of the series, right? I'm not going to even do a spoiler section. I know these other ones I've been doing like, oh, here's this and here's a spoiler free. This whole review is pretty much spoiler free, and then here's spoilers. There's nothing that made me go, oh my gosh, or gasp, or there's only one thing I want, and that's, I can even say it and nobody would really bat an eye, and that's, what the heck was Lucian up to in a lot of this book? I want to know that. That's my one thing that makes me want to keep reading, because that was my favorite character, and I felt like he was mistreated in this story quite a bit, and there was just a thing that he was supposed to do, and it was kind of ripped out from under his feet, and you're like, nice, cool, thank you. So yeah, it wasn't the best book of the series, and it was the longest one of the series too, so that's a little bit disappointing, but it's not breaking. I do like the world. I do want to continue forward to see what's going on, and yeah, maybe I'm just a weirdo with this percentage. I know I've been talking to my wife about it, and she feels the same, that it was the weakest of the three books so far, but I'm excited to read the next, and we're excited to see a book from Nesta's point of view, because she has such a unique personality as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it and felt the same way. Let me know in the comments how you felt about this book, and if this was your favorite of the series, tell me why. What was your favorite part? All of that jazz. And I will see you guys the next time. Toodles.